Iraq collapsing, oil prices spiking, al-Qaeda-inspired militants threatening more cities, and a major refinery as they blitz through oil-rich Iraq. Lots of calls to send U.S. help over there. And now Summit Forbes says we can also protect ourselves at the pump here back at home by starting to build the Keystone oil pipeline right now. Are they right? Hi, everybody. I'm Liz McDonald in for David Asman. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Let's go in focus with Steve Forbes, Rich Karlgaard, Sabrina Schaefer, Mike Ozanian, Rick Unger, and John Tamney. Now, Steve, the spreading chaos in the Mideast, more proof we need to get moving on becoming less dependent on Mideast oil?
Absolutely. We should have that kind of a backup, so the pipeline should have been approved years ago. Also, the federal government should remove restrictions. The White House should remove restrictions on federal lands for drilling for gas and oil, which they've been dragging their feet on. And they should also greenlight the building of facilities to export natural gas around the world and get more of a global market there. So more supply will eventually get through this crisis. But we've got to get that signal out there, and the White House is not giving it. All
right, Rick Unger, we have the Kerry and Clinton State Department saying we'll not add demonstrably a lot to greenhouse gases. We have the Nebraska governor saying we have a route for you that would bypass the aquifers. Why not build the Keystone?
Actually, you know, I don't know that you can draw this strong connection between the terrible things happening in Iraq and the value the Keystone pipeline would add in bringing down prices. It might bring it down a tiny bit, but most experts will tell you it's not going to be huge. But I will make a prediction here that I think is going to make each and every one of you very happy. You noticed that last week the president announced his 30% reduction in carbon, right? Why would he do that at such a strange time with some key Democratic candidates hanging in the balance? I'll tell you why. Very soon, he's going to announce that he's approving the Keystone pipeline, and he was throwing a bone to the environmentalists when he made that announcement. You watch. It's
well, interesting.
Happen.
A Senate panel is voting on it next week. We got, Democrat like Mary Landrieu wanting it. But let me take it to you, Rich Karlgaard. To the point about whether or not it will lower prices, look at this memo from the Energy Department to the State Department. In June 2011, quote, it says the gas prices in all markets served by these refineries that serve the Gulf Coast and the East Coast, that it would decrease prices, including in the Midwest. And again, we're referring to the refineries in the East and Gulf Coast. What do you make of that, Karlgaard?
Well, I think that the Keystone is a good thing, and it would be a great signal. It would stop speculation. It would show that this government is serious about energy production. What's going on in Iraq is tragic right now. I think it's a long-term blip. I was at an energy conference in Houston earlier this week. The Bakken Reserve in North Dakota is going to be dwarfed by what's happening in Texas right now. One of the year's most impactful things happened in Mexico, and Mexico decided to privatize their oil industry. That's going to be huge. So from Canada, from North Dakota through Texas and Mexico, we're just going to be awash in oil.
So, here's the thing, Mike Ozanian, to Rich Karlgaard's point. I mean, it almost feels like there's certain stubbornness that drains people of all common sense. When you have basically the Energy Department saying, hey, wait a second, if you have to not do the Keystone pipeline and you rely on shipping to Asia, that's 10 times the miles you're going to ship, that oil from Canada to Asia. That adds to the costs. Also, if you had the Keystone, get this, Mike Ozanian, you would basically be able to ship Bakken shale oil and mid-continent oil through the refinery as well via the Keystone. So it seems like supply would go up and the prices would go down. What do you think, Mike?
Well, I wouldn't call it stubbornness, Emac. I call it stupidity. This thing should have been approved years ago. If it had been approved years ago, one of the benefits would have been our economy would have been stronger. And as pertaining what's happening in the Middle East, perhaps the president wouldn't then have gone out and gut the military because our economic growth had been so weak. That's my real concern, is he's gutted our military at the time Al-Qaeda is getting stronger.
And also you can't have a strong economy without national security. Sabrina Schaefer, oil is part of national security. Sabrina, listen here. To Mike's point, we've got to really shake your recovery. And if you have, gas prices going up, that threatens that very rickety recovery. What do you think?
No, that's right. And look, this is a president who has spoken passionately about the need for job creation, for environmental regulations, and for energy independence. And allowing the Keystone pipeline to move forward would actually check all three of those boxes. The problem is that we suffer from this fossil fuel alarmism here in the United States, which is driven all by the fringe environmentalists. And as they have said, there is no blanket of regulations large enough to allow them to throw their weight behind the Keystone pipeline. But this is truly absurd.
You know, John Tamney, about energy independence. I mean, isn't that what the whole country, and I thought it was a bipartisan push for decades to have energy independence. So why not build the Keystone?
Well, I'm all for building the Keystone pipeline, but let's not mistake a couple of things here. We don't have a supply problem, and evidence supporting that is all the oil that's coming online around the world, and oil prices are still high. Oil is high today precisely because the Bush and then the Obama administration have not protected the dollar. If you want to see oil prices drop, you must do as Reagan and Clinton did, protect the dollar, and oil prices will decline. I love Keystone, but it has nothing to do with the price of oil.
Well, all right. So let me take it to Steve Forbes. I mean, to Chamney's point, getting back again to energy independence, I feel like we're in this post-bubble disorder that only the government can fix everything, that the economy is still in the protective custody of, you know, the administration. I mean, where's the executive order for Keystone?
He doesn't decide to do it because he doesn't really want it. And even if he approves Keystone, apropos of what Rick Unger said, they'll find ways to put obstacles in the way so this thing drags out and drags out. And in terms, yes, the trouble in the Middle East has spiked oil. Even if we had a stable dollar, you get these events, so you get a temporary spike. But the key thing is we have supply and we can have more supply. And when you have more supply, you find more uses for it. So it's a virtuous circle. Let the virtuous circle happen.
Rick Unger, I thought you were for energy independence from the Mideast.
Yeah, I don't quite understand why we equate the Keystone to energy independence. I love the idea of energy independence, and I thought Rich Karlgaard laid it out absolutely beautifully. The Keystone pipeline does not create energy independence. It simply adds more oil to the world oil picture, which could have an impact, certainly to some degree, on world prices. But it doesn't
We just showed you an Energy Department memo saying it would help Midwest oil prices here at home. Rick Karlgaard, what do you make of what Unger's saying?
Well, look, Rick, you know, I think it's a very important signal, the Keystone pipeline. You know, we saw later this week, you know, in the later part of this week, that oil spiked on news in Iraq and the stock market went down. You know, if you want to reverse that, then I think you've got to make an important statement about the Keystone pipeline. Will it have an immediate economic impact? Probably not. You know, long term it will. Long term, the huge thing is all of this oil that exists along the Plains states, Canada and Mexico, which I think, you know, in the long term, I'm very optimistic about this situation, bad as it seems today.
And Sabrina, final point, you know, we didn't even get to the point about the rail cars being like weapons of mass destruction, as Stephen Schork, oil analyst, says. You know, even the State Department put out a report for the President's own State Department saying there would be no deaths, 1 injury if you did the pipeline. There would be 6 deaths and 49, nearly 50 injuries if you kept it by rail, shipping by rail.
Right. No, and we had that serious accident in North Dakota back in December. But to your earlier point, Enoch, I mean, the fact is that this doesn't even have to be government getting involved, right? This is a $7 billion private operation that would create estimated 20,000 construction jobs alone. So this is an example where the private marketplace could really be set free if the government would allow them.
Tamney, quickly, final point.
Well, again, I love Keystone, but it will make us more energy dependent. I think that's a good thing, but it means we'll import more oil. To me, that's beautiful, but let's not mistake it for energy independence. It has nothing to do with it.
Okay, but import it not from the Mideast. Good point. Gang, you were great.